raceway for offshore breezes. There was a beautiful breeze in the clubhouse. It was cool and peaceful, and the house was modest, like something out of a book of vernacular architecture from the South Pacific, or a prefab affair from a 1940s Sears catalog. It was furnished with hand-me-downs and thrift store finds, and the kind of upright piano you would find in the rec room of a church, with one or two keys missing. Mostly, I remember this. A bird flew into the house right after we entered, and it felt like a sign. We helped the bird to get its bearings, for it was confused and stuck. And we were alive, full of clarity and flirtatious altruism. The bird flew out the back door and made a beeline for the Pacific Ocean. We looked out toward the water, but it was late, and the sun, low over the horizon, shone so brightly, her flight was absorbed by white light. We drove back in silence, slingshotting up Sunset Boulevard, pink and orange melting in the rear view, thinking about the bird.
Children, like plants, are a thing that push up from the ground. When my brothers and I were children in Yonkers, New York, the ground was a cool concrete, some grassy mud, and tarry black pavement. The walls around us were yellow and red brick, an apartment complex on the northwest side of Yonkers, near the Hudson River. Our neighborhood was hilly, and most streets had a view of the Palisades across the river in New Jersey. It was said that the roof of our buildings had the same view, but we were forbidden from ever going up there, so help us God. And once, when James M. dared to go up there to get a wiffle ball, all the moms in the building made us come home early for dinner. My family had the shameful reputation amongst the gang of kids in the buildings of being the family who would buy McDonald's drive-thru, take the food all the way home, and unpack the burgers, fries, and chicken nuggets onto real plates before eating any of it. My parents liked to do things the proper way, were kind of risk-averse, and provided me safe, hard boundaries for the first years of my life. The building we lived in was one of two U-shaped 3-story buildings with a courtyard in the middle that had an outdoor pool, a playground with an empty sandbox, some rusty swings, a metal slide, and monkey bars. The games my friends and I played were both terrestrial and aquatic. The courtyard had giant rock formations that remained cool in the shade of the buildings and the trees that created different atmospheres for different types of play. There was the sloping mountain-esque rocks with a cavernous space, the perfect size for an 8-year-old's imaginary fireplace. There was the cliff, popular for announcing the birth of lion princes named Simba to the tune of the Circle of Life. There was the stage, the music video rocks, where Dana M. and I danced literal interpretations of Boyz II Men and Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. Dana was my best friend. She was a year ahead of me in school and generally did not let me forget it. Together, usually following her lead, we'd spend the summers running from the pool to the parking lot to bake our skin, to the playground to take turns pretending to be Olympic gymnast Carrie Strug. Every summer, our skin would change from white to pink to brown, our hair from brown to blonde to green from all the chlorine. Dana's family was just like mine, only slightly different. Both of our families had 2 boys and a girl who were the same ages. Both lived in 3-bedroom apartments, though ours was on the 2nd floor and theirs was on the 1st floor. Both families sent their kids to Catholic school, though ours was just down the street and theirs was on the other side of Yonkers. Both families went to the same part of the Jersey Shore barrier islands during the same week of the summer. But even though the towns where our families stayed were right next to each other, they too were slightly different. My family stayed in Ocean Beach, a town made up entirely of 2-bedroom, prefabricated pastel-colored beach houses with a side yard to grill in. The purpose of Ocean Beach was as simple as its name: swim in the ocean, grill some hamburgers, eat some ice cream at Dairy Queen. If it was rainy, we'd watch the Little League World Series on TV, or drive 20 minutes to the movies. Every time we went, I would beg my mother to let me go and stay for a night with Dana's family in the next town over, La Valette. My mother would not be pleased, but eventually she would relent and drive me down there. La Valette was geographically, visually, and culturally closer to America's most well-known Jersey Shore town, Seaside Heights, home to MTV's Jersey Shore and one of the most crowded boardwalks in the state. Going there meant buying spray-painted t-shirts, getting a portion of our hair wrapped in colorful string, and even meeting people who didn't just go to vacation there, but actually lived there. The sand was dirtier, and there were more adults and teenagers than at Ocean Beach. It would have been hard to explain at the time why going anywhere with Dana's family was so exciting. But looking back, I know that with her family, we had a little less supervision, and we were exposed to things that my parents considered vulgar or inappropriate, but that were wild and extravagant in my eyes. Her dad had tattoos, and her mom let us use coconut-scented tanning oils. At their place, we could listen to Hot 97, New York City's famous hip-hop radio station, and watch as much MTV as we wanted. And since they had an illegal cable box, we could even watch an entire softcore porn on the Playboy channel if no one was around. Everything Dana's family offered was noisier, brighter, faster, more seaside than my family. During the school year, I spent less time with Dana and her family, and more time with another gang of slightly older girls. They were the younger sisters of the boys my brothers played basketball with at our pre-K through 8 parochial school, Christ the King. Christ the King was another brick building surrounded by gray parking lots on 2 sides, one of which emptied out for us at noon when the school broke for recess. On another side of the building was the church, a sweet Tudor-style chapel with a wooden steeple, and the rectory with its immense ancient weeping willow. The front of the school building had a silver cross and a mosaic rendering of a white, blonde-bearded Jesus holding a small child up towards the heavens. The inscription, "Let the little children come unto me," which before the major pre-small station scandal passed without much scrutiny. That's because for us, bad things were always in the landscapes you couldn't see for yourself, and never the ones you knew well. For instance, Christ the King was across the street from Yonkers School 16, a public elementary school where they told us we'd be forced to go if we didn't behave. From across the street, the kids looked normal enough in their sweatpants or jeans, and maybe they'd even smile and wave at you once in a while. But ask any kid at Christ the King, and they'd tell you that School 16 was only for the most rotten bad kids on the planet. While my brothers played basketball at school one night, my mother and her friend Diane made and sold hot dogs and other refreshments out of the cafeteria kitchen. The school was a small enough community and the building locked up enough at night during these games that our parents kept very little watch over us, allowing myself and the other younger sisters to sneak around a fair amount. We liked to pretend that the statue of the Virgin Mary in the hallway outside the gym near the principal's office was our mother, or our boyfriend, or our boss in a busy restaurant where we were all pretty waitresses. On this particular night, our play area of choice was near the back door where our mothers were making hot dogs, although my memory fails me to come up with an explanation for this particular choice of location. All I can remember is the reason we were given to be ushered back inside. We were told a gang of people were gathering in the back of the school and that we'd better stay away from them, safe inside the hot dog kitchen. The people we were supposed to stay away from were devil worshippers. I don't remember who told us that they were devil worshippers, or if maybe I asked someone, perhaps a snarky adult, if maybe the bad people outside, who were likely just some teenagers smoking cigarettes, if it was possible that they could be soldiers in Satan's army. And maybe the adult said, yes, that's right, devil worshippers, please don't ask me any more questions. Or maybe there was an older kid, could have been one of my brothers, who spread the rumor. Whoever it was, it didn't seem as odd or laughable that devil worshippers should gather outside the local Catholic school. As far as I knew, there were Satanists everywhere. In the news, which I watched every day with my grandmother, at 5, 6, and then sometimes even 11 p.m. every night on CBS Channel 2, there would sometimes be a story about the rumors of a far-reaching national conspiracy of satanic ritual abuse. And in Yonkers, the specter of Satan was especially pervasive. Our apartment building was down the street from Untermeyer Park and Gardens, the giant former estate of a 19th century New York State Governor Samuel L. Tilden. The gardens feature a Grecian-style amphitheater, a Persian paradise garden, a statuary, and one of the best sledding hills in Yonkers, stunning views of the Hudson River, and vast tracts of woods. As a child, I knew almost none of these places inside of Untermeyer. To me, it was the park where my preschool was, and the rest was the setting for nearly every ghost story I heard as a kid, and the landscape of my nightmares. According to local legend, worshippers at the altar of Satan gathered there nightly for their perverse rituals. And if you approached at a certain part of the woods, not far from nearby St. John's Hospital, at a certain hour of the night, you could see their flaming torches and hear their sinister chanting. Everyone I knew had an older sibling or a babysitter or a cousin who had claimed to have seen with their own eyes the corpses of crows and squirrels slaughtered in a ritualistic fashion, pentagrams etched into tree trunks, or a hidden cave painted with inverted crosses. The park was also famous for its association with David Berkowitz, aka the .44 caliber killer, or more famously, Son of Sam. The Son of Sam was a serial killer who stalked and killed women and couples in the Bronx and Manhattan in the late 70s. It was in Untermeyer Park where Berkowitz claimed he partook in mass gatherings of Satan's followers, where he was ultimately inspired to embark on his killing spree. In my mind, the devil was inextricably linked to two things: the Son of Sam, who was ultimately arrested in an apartment building not very far from where I grew up, though 10 years before I was born, and the image of flaming torches inside the park. Fire became my worst fear, and ultimately the arbiter of my transition from a child ignorant of the dangers of anything but a scraped-up bloody knee to someone prematurely aware of the dangers lying underneath everyday objects, like the electric radiators in each unit of our building. Once, in the early fall when I was around 10 years old, one of these radiators caught on fire in the apartment across the hall from my mom's friend Kathy. It was late in the afternoon when my mom got the call from Kathy. My mom, in addition to being Kathy's confidant, was also on the occupants board for the condominium. She rushed to put her sneakers on, and sensing some danger, refused to let her go and see the fire without me. I refused to let her go and see the fire without me. Looking back, I can't imagine why she should have ever let me go with her to see the building on fire, but I imagine she felt she had no time to argue with me about it, so out the door we both went. First, we walked around the side of the apartment complex. The fire had already been put out, but there were still trucks in the surrounding streets, and many people standing around looking up at the smoldering windows. The smoke had stained the yellow and brick red around each of the windows in that corner of the building. The apartment had caught on fire, was on the ground floor, and while it was contained within that one unit, thanks to the building's concrete walls, the 2 floors above it were so engulfed in smoke and soot that I later learned they had to throw almost everything they owned in the garbage, including all of their clothing and furniture. After seeing the damage from outside, my mom and I went to see Kathy. Opening the door to her hallway, the smoke smell, which usually just smelled like cigarettes, as Kathy and many of our neighbors at that time in the mid-90s were heavy smokers, now smelled of a fresh campfire. At the end of the hall, Kathy stood in her doorway speaking with some firefighters and neighbors. Across from her, an otherwise normal door frame, just like every other door in the hall, encased a view that should have been a regular apartment, with floral embroidered couches and Persian carpeting, and maybe an etagere with porcelain knickknacks. Instead, it framed a new landscape, a shocking, deep, immense, total blackness.